They say more than 22,000 square miles of corn are planted each year in the wide open, windy plains of Iowa. So it was here 55 years ago, at the height of the Cold War, as the threat of nuclear attack menaced East and West, that a strange, if not feared, visitor blew into the tiny town of Coon Rapids, seeking to feed his people.
It was a beautiful fall day. It was during our harvest.
Elizabeth Garst, Lisby as she was called back in 1959, was just 8 years old. The visitor was Nikita Khrushchev and his family. And Lisby's granddad, the agricultural innovator Roswell Garst, was going to help the Soviets develop modern farms of their own at his, one of the largest farms in Iowa. A gesture that may have helped to begin to melt tensions.
I'm sure that Mr. Stevenson is constantly thinking, as I am, of how our nations can best live in peace without war.
First, though, Mrs. Khrushchev practiced some détente of her own.
I got into a scuffle with another young kid who was here that day, and Mrs. Khrushchev strolled by, caught us fighting, ripped us apart by our collars, and got her fingers right in our face. See, little brothers and sisters, mustn't fight, mustn't fight.
All these years later, both Nikita and Roswell are gone. But that cold wind of suspicion between the United States and what is now simply Russia is back. Here in Coon Rapids, they wonder if we're rewinding to that scarier time.
Geez, 60 years later, we certainly ought to have learned something. In 1959, we were all fearful that, a nuclear war would end the world as we knew it. 60 years later, we haven't really improved that much.
At the Coon Rapids Enterprise, more than 130 years of history is bound and stored, and today dusted off. That day on the Garst farm is documented. It's how people communicated back then.
There's nobody that's really engaged with Mr. Putin on a personal basis, and that's what Garst and Khrushchev were able to forge, and that's what seems to be missing at this point.
At the afternoon coffee ritual, talk and laughter is all about local sports and March Madness. But Putin's push into Crimea has raised some eyebrows.
It's an international law no-no.
But for pharmacist Don Pomeroy, it's not enough of one to divert attentions away from local issues like school closings and poverty.
I'm not just huge on us constantly worrying about whether our neighbors have raked the leaves in their yard, you know. I'd rather solve our own problems at home.
Just a few miles down the road and across the tracks, parched farmers wind down their day.
Nikita Khrushchev actually came here to the middle of nowhere, Iowa, and it actually kind of was a very positive visit.
I think what we wanted to happen with Russia went out the window about 6, 7 years ago with Putin. They're not going to be our friends.
At the Russian, or the Russian, diplomacy's conducted the Midwestern way, over a beer and a marriage. In owners Troy and Tanya Mount, East meets West.
It's all about money. It's all about politics. They don't care about people. Are you serious? I have a family there, you know. They have to deal with these situations, you know. And I wish I can help them, but I can't.
And what would those two men all those years ago in black and white have said about that?
Our relationship is in tatters. We are really rabidly anti-Russian right now, and I think they're really rabidly anti-U.S. right now.
For Meet the Press, Kevin Tibbles.